Imagine waking up in the middle of the night to the sound of gunshots echoing through your apartment complex. You call 911. Police arrive expecting to find a typical disturbance. Instead, they uncover a horrifying scene. A mother lies dead, her son is dead, and a teenage girl is missing. Hours later, that missing girl is found murdered too. 3 members of the same family gone in a single night. But what makes this case truly disturbing isn't just the brutality of the murders. It's the fact that even after investigators identified the killer and secured a conviction, one terrifying question remained unanswered. Why? What reason could someone have for wiping out an entire family? This is the disturbing case of the DeVore family murders and Anthony Sanders. To understand this tragedy, we need to start with the victims. Diane Grant was a 44-year-old mother living in North Charleston, South Carolina. Friends described her as a caring parent who worked hard to provide for her children. Living with her were several family members, including her 20-year-old son, Jatavios DeVore, and her 14-year-old daughter, DeAnna DeVore. Like many families, they faced everyday challenges, but nothing suggested the horror that was about to unfold. They lived in the Archdale Forest apartment complex, a place where families expected to feel safe in their own homes. But on the night of July 10, 2007, that sense of security would be shattered forever. Shortly after midnight, residents of the apartment complex began hearing gunshots. At first, some thought it was fireworks, others assumed it was a random act of violence somewhere nearby. But the reality was much worse. When officers arrived at the apartment, they discovered a gruesome crime scene. Inside, Diane Grant had been shot to death. Nearby was the body of her son, Jatavios. Both had suffered fatal gunshot wounds. As investigators searched the apartment, they realized someone was missing. 14-year-old DeAnna DeVore wasn't there. At first, police hoped she had escaped. Maybe she had run away after hearing the gunfire. Maybe she was hiding somewhere nearby, but those hopes quickly disappeared. Hours later, DeAnna's body was discovered outside the apartment complex. She too had been murdered. 3 members of the same family had been killed in a single night. Yet somehow, 2 younger children inside the home survived unharmed. The killer had chosen specific victims. This wasn't random. This was personal. Or at least, that's what investigators believe. News of the murders spread rapidly across North Charleston. Residents struggled to understand how such violence could happen. An entire family had been devastated. Parents hugged their children a little tighter. Neighbors locked their doors earlier than usual. Fear spread throughout the community. People wanted answers. Who committed these murders? And why would anyone target this family? At that point, investigators had very little to work with. There were no obvious eyewitnesses, no clear motive, and no immediate suspect. But the crime scene had left behind clues. Detectives began carefully examining shell casings recovered from the scene. Every piece of evidence mattered. The casings would eventually become one of the most important pieces of the case. Investigators also interviewed dozens of residents from the apartment complex. People reported hearing gunshots. Some claimed to have seen suspicious activity. Others remembered seeing a man carrying a firearm around the time of the murders. As detectives pieced together witness statements, one name began appearing repeatedly: Anthony Sanders. Sanders wasn't a stranger to law enforcement. Investigators soon learned information that would place him squarely in the center of the investigation. But proving involvement in a triple homicide is never easy. Police needed more than rumors. They needed evidence. As detectives dug deeper, they focused their attention on Anthony Sanders. Witnesses allegedly placed him near the apartment complex around the time of the killings. Cell phone records reportedly suggested he was in the area. Even more significant was the ballistic evidence. Shell casings from the murder scene were compared to evidence from other shootings connected to Sanders. Investigators believed there was a match. Suddenly, the case against Sanders began growing stronger. Yet there was still a major problem. Police never recovered the murder weapon. Without the gun, the prosecution would have to rely heavily on circumstantial evidence, witness testimony, and forensic analysis. That can be difficult in any murder trial. In a triple homicide case, the stakes were even higher. As evidence mounted against Sanders, one question continued haunting investigators: what was the motive? Normally, homicide detectives look for a reason: money, revenge, jealousy, personal conflict, something. But in this case, no clear explanation emerged. Authorities publicly stated they did not believe the murders were random. Yet they never fully explained Sanders' connection to the victims. The public was left wondering, did he know the family personally? Was there an argument, a grudge, a hidden conflict that never became public? To this day, many people familiar with the case believe the lack of a clear motive is one of its most unsettling aspects. The killer was identified, but the reason behind the killings remained largely a mystery. Prosecutors spent years preparing their case. They believed the evidence painted a compelling picture: witness statements, cell phone data, ballistic evidence, circumstantial details. Taken individually, each piece might not seem overwhelming, but together, prosecutors argued they pointed directly to Anthony Sanders. The defense challenged the state's evidence. Without a murder weapon and without direct eyewitness testimony, questions remain. Could the evidence truly prove guilt beyond a reasonable doubt? The courtroom battle would determine the answer. The possibility of a death sentence loomed over the case. Because of the nature of the crimes, prosecutors initially sought the death penalty. Facing that possibility, Sanders chose a bench trial rather than a jury trial. That meant a judge would determine his fate. During the proceedings, prosecutors laid out their evidence and reconstructed the events of that night. They argued that the combination of forensic evidence, witness testimony, and investigative findings established Sanders' guilt. The defense challenged those conclusions and questioned the strength of the evidence. The trial attracted significant attention. Many people wanted justice for Diane, Jatavios, and DeAnna. Others closely watched to see whether the prosecution could secure a conviction despite the absence of the murder weapon. After reviewing the evidence, the judge reached a decision. Anthony Sanders was found guilty of the murders. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Legally, the case was over, but emotionally, many questions remained. Even after the conviction, the mystery never completely disappeared. Why were these particular victims targeted? Why were the younger children spared? What exactly happened inside that apartment before the murders? Was there information investigators never revealed publicly? Cases like this leave behind more than grief. They leave behind uncertainty. For the surviving family members, the conviction brought a measure of justice. But justice doesn't always bring understanding. And understanding is often what people seek most after a tragedy. Years later, many who study this case continue returning to the same unanswered question: why? The DeVore family murders remain one of the most disturbing crimes in South Carolina history. 3 lives were taken, a family was destroyed, a community was traumatized. 3 murders, 1 convicted killer, and a motive that remains frustratingly unclear. Do you think investigators uncovered the full truth? Or do you believe there are still missing pieces to this story that the public has never been told? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Until next time, stay safe and stay curious.